According to the Dayton Peace Accords, which marked the end of the Bosnian War in 1995, the country was split between two entities: the Muslim Croat Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Serbian Republic, known as the Republic of Srpska.
Banja Luka is an exception to the Bosnian rule. The capital of the Republic of Srpska didn't suffer serious damage during the civil war in the 1990s, so its facade has been saved. Most Bosnian people can only dream that their town looks that peaceful.
The country's capital, Sarajevo, was the scene of heavy fighting between the Serbs and the Muslims. The city still bears the signs. The Serbs left the capital after the war, moving to eastern Sarajevo, which is the part of the Republic of Srpska. Now Sarajevo is predominantly Muslim. The ethnic Serbs sometimes call it European Tehran. Radical Muslim movements have funded the construction of several mosques and religious schools there. The billboards read, "Bosnia is peaceful now," but an international representative has to oversee the country.
Look, we are here like a football referee. I am having my competencies, and I like to describe my bomb powers as a referee's yellow and red card. So, which means the best match you have when you don't even notice there was a referee. He didn't have to use red cards or yellow cards.
The memories of the conflict are still painful for Muslim veteran Fejat Forte.
There is a starting point of the bobsledge, and everything now is destroyed. It's very sad and very pity to be here. I was here 100 times before the war.
The Trebević mountain was one of the most popular sites for the residents of Sarajevo. Fejat remembers a magnificent restaurant on the top of the mountain. Now it lies in ruins. A vantage point with a terrific view of the city was the target for all of the fighting sites. In 1992, Muslim politicians declared Bosnia's independence from Yugoslavia. Shortly after, the civil war began. The Muslims were fighting for their independence, the Croats for a larger territory, the Serbs for the territorial integrity of Yugoslavia. The three sides had their reasons, but all used the same means: shells and bullets. Sarajevo was in a very vulnerable position. The Serbs took control of the surrounding mountains and started the so-called Siege of Sarajevo. The Muslims describe it as the longest siege of a city in human history. However, the city wasn't closed off to the outside world. There was a bus connection with the rest of the country for civilians, and the airport was under UN control, which prevented the Serbian forces from taking over the city. In 1993, Muslim forces dug a tunnel under the airport, which connected the city with the area controlled by the Bosniaks.
My biggest problem always was that I'm very tall for this tunnel. And if you can imagine me, much weaker than I am now, maybe 20 kilos less than I have right now, with my gun full of ammunition, with my personal luggage, and to travel through the tunnel, it was a horrific experience.
The Yugoslav army didn't manage to destroy the tunnel. For 2 years, it was used as a major supply route for the city. In the meantime, it's become the black hole of the Balkans.
The dark story of tunnel is it didn't serve only for ordinary people, but also for people from black market. Some people made fortune, because if you had courage to go from Sarajevo to Hrasnica, and if you bring to Sarajevo some basic goods like sugar, oil, coffee, etc., you could make fortune. And some people who did it during the war now are honorable new capitalist class.
Russian north, close to the White Sea, lies the Kandalaksha Preservation Area, where nature prevails, and there's no other choice but to follow the Wilderness Code. A story about the defenders at the gates of pure nature on RT.
The whole territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina was a theater of war in the early 1990s. The major clashes were around the capital Sarajevo and in the north of the country. Igor Cholic's unit was attacked by the Muslims in this area. The Serbian veteran lost an eye in the fight, and several bullets are still in his body. It might be dangerous to remove them.
I met my father here at the headquarters, just before the fighting started. He was the commander of an infantry unit at that time. We spent several minutes together. He undid his chain, gave it to me and told me to look after my mother if he died. Thank God he's alive.
Now this village is inhabited by the Croats. Igor has come here for the first time since the war ended. But he remembers all of the ruins here, as at the time some of these houses were a menace and others were a shelter.
It's so strange being here for the first time since the war ended. I don't know what to tell you. War is a disaster.
The deadliest war in the Balkans lasted for more than 3 years. It claimed the lives of more than 100,000. In 1995, the Muslim and Croat forces, supported by NATO, carried out an offensive against the Yugoslav army. At the end of 1995, the three sides agreed to sign the Dayton Peace Accords, which defined the current political structure of the country.
The political system is extremely complicated. We have 5 presidents, 4 vice presidents, we have 14 governments, 14 parliaments, we have more than 140 ministers and approximately 700 members of different parliaments here. So it's probably too many for a country of less than 4 million inhabitants, but that's the fact of life, that's the legacy of the war.
Sarajevo, one of the most beautiful cities in the Balkans, was devastated during the conflict. It was twice as hard for the city, which had hosted the Winter Olympics just 8 years before. The Olympic Winter Games were held in Sarajevo in 1984. 8 years on, and the sports complex was turned into a theater of war. This bobsleigh track was on the front line. Those fighting inside the track made loopholes to repel attacks from the outside. The fighting lasted for years. That brutal competition has changed the face of the once magnificent Olympic venue forever. Destroyed sports venues, houses, mosques and churches are commonplace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But the Canadian International Demining Corps deals with a more burning issue: landmines.